Oh, hi. It's your girl, the Lady Miss VaginaJenkins, and it is time for queer astrology. So I think most people know what a natal or a birth chart is in astrology. It's sort of an energetic blueprint for like patterns that you might notice unfolding over the course of your life. But how can you use your natal chart to check in on where you are at this point in your life? Let's talk about it. This video is based on a type of astrology reading that I offer called an astro weather check-in. And basically I just combine a couple of different astrology techniques to help folks understand where they are at this point in their life and what sort of things are happening in the sky that might affect them in, like a 3 to 6 month time period, depending on the transits. And so I wanted to walk you through how I do that kind of reading, and we'll look at a chart together. So yeah, let's get into it. So I'm going to show you the chart, and hopefully I am recording the chart at the same time so you can see my cursor as it moves around. Let's cross our fingers that the technology is with us. So yeah, this is again what I call an astro weather check-in. Let's check out this chart together. I've taken off all of the birth data and of course their name because you don't need to know who they are, but let's look at their chart. All right, so the way that I go about this, first and foremost, is to understand the big three in the chart. We talked about this in a previous video that I will try and link here somewhere. But yeah, the big three in the chart is of course the rising sign, the sun sign, and the moon sign. And why those are important to know is I often offer up the metaphor of walking through the path of life. The rising sign is fundamental to how you navigate that path. It's kind of who you fundamentally are. The moon sign I like to think of as what you need to feel nurtured and safe as you walk along this path. And then the sun sign is kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. It's what you are moving toward. And I always like to offer up that metaphor because a lot of times people don't resonate with their sun signs. And it makes a lot of sense because you're not there yet, if that makes sense. Sometimes when I do see people that do resonate with their sun signs, it's usually because they have a lot of placements, like a stellium in that sign. But this person does not. So their big three is Capricorn rising. They have a Libra moon, and they have a Cancer sun. And so that's something that I need to know from their birth chart. Another thing that I need to know from their birth chart is what is their chart ruler and where is that planet in the chart? Because I always want to know where that planet is in the chart and where it is in the sky, because this is a crucial planet to understanding how they navigate the world. And so they've got this Capricorn rising. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and so Saturn would be their chart ruler. And I see that Saturn is placed here in the 9th house. So a lot of who they fundamentally are is a sort of Capricorn essence. And we talked about that last week, about what Capricorn essence is like in that love letter to Capricorn. And yeah, when I think about Capricorn, I think about hard work, responsibility, and how their life unfolds over time. just because Saturn is kind of known as a timekeeper in astrology. And yeah, this is, again, it can be late bloomer energy. And I would want to know where that work and where that late blooming actually happens. And yeah, we're talking about late blooming and being dedicated and responsible in the ninth house. So the area of life that is devoted to one's deeply held belief systems and philosophies about life. It does have a little bit to do with like higher education and academia, but more so it's the one's beliefs, is the best way to put it. And when we think about ninth house in Virgo, I think about the energy of, again, how you move through life, Capricorn, dedication, hard work, responsibility, to philosophies, you know, because we're going into that ninth house stuff, philosophies and belief systems that better the world in a tangible way, better the world and their life in a tangible way. And so for this person, this is definitely a theme that might come up a lot in their life, is changing their mind, changing the way that they think about things to serve them better. It's always this idea of self-improvement, working on oneself. There may be a tendency towards being a bit of a perfectionist, or being stuck in, there's a right way to think about things. There's a right, absolute right philosophy. And you know, I'm not going to debate it. But yeah, sometimes there can be a little bit of wiggle room in what is right. And so that's just something that I would offer up to them, just generally speaking. But yeah, second point basically is to remember we've got their big three, and what is their ruling planet? Saturn. We got to keep an eye on Saturn in any type of chart that we do for this person. So that's the second thing that I want to think about. And then the third thing that I want to know as we're doing this like check-in, is what is happening. There we go. What is happening in their chart in terms of where they are right now, and so what profection year they are in. As a reminder, the profection year is a traditional Hellenistic astrology technique, and it basically talks about how every year on your birthday, the area of interest changes from one house to another. And so like when you're born, that's a first house year, the time between your birthday and your first birthday, that is a first house year. And so how we're learning to navigate the world, who am I, what even am, you know, what am I doing here, how do I navigate this? And so we keep going. Every year on your birthday it changes to another sign, and they happen to be in an 8th house profection year. And you'll remember from my video about the 8th house profection year and me sharing my story of my 8th house profection year, that the 8th house profection year can be a little bit about loss. You know, it's the 4th, 8th, and 12th house years are more difficult profection years to navigate. But you know, everything of course is what you make it and how you strategize. And of course, like your mental attitude. So it's amazing and very useful that they are in their 8th house year, but that their life's work has been rooted in their mental landscape and having belief systems and philosophies that serve them and are always about bettering them. So yeah, as they're navigating their 8th house year, yes, things happen in terms of loss. 8th house has to do with sometimes straight up death, sometimes just the death of old ideas, you know, like the death card in tarot. a little bit about sex. I mean, all of the things that are taboo. A little bit about sex, possibly things to do with shared resources, especially the resources that you share with a partner. It can have a lot to do maybe with like, it can have to do with like substance use, or maybe even things like taxes or debts owed. So those are sort of eighth house things. So I'm wondering about their experience this year with those things. And I wonder if there has been any loss in terms of those areas of life. And then if they're in an eighth house year, I want to know what sign it's in and what is the ruler, the planetary ruler of that sign. So they're an eighth house year that is ruled by Leo. When I think about Leo energy, I think about self-expression, especially creative self-expression, like shining and being recognized for, you know, how you express yourself. I also think about being held up as royalty in some sort of way, royalty, celebrity, that kind of thing. And so I am wondering about their experience of loss as it relates to creative self-expression, like maybe an arts practice or anything like that, or their reputation as a celebrity or well-known figure or royal in their life. You know, depending on what they do for work. I mean, you can be a celebrity accountant, you know, so yeah. I'm curious about that experience. And then the last thing that I'll say is, okay, so if they're in an eighth house year and their eighth house is ruled by Leo, then what is the planetary ruler of Leo? The sun. And so the sun is going to have a major importance for them this year. So then where is the sun in transit to where they are right now in their life? And that's when we look at this outer ring that is in light green. It's like a blue ring around the natal chart. And then within that blue ring, we see these little green symbols. And those are the transiting planets that are in the sky right now. And we see the sun sitting at the last degrees of Capricorn. And they are, you know, like I said, they're a Capricorn rising. So it's the sun right now is in their last degrees of who they fundamentally are. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. This is an interesting day to be talking about the sun in Capricorn, because as you can see, the sun and Pluto are sitting directly next to each other. This is what's known as a Cazimi, C-A-Z-I-M-I. And it basically speaks to the fact that like a planet is sitting directly in the sun's light. So things are about to get really, really clear, really, it's like unearthing, like Pluto is about like the depths of things and shadow work and things that need to be excavated and dug up, you know? And so the sun right next to Pluto gives us the illumination, the clarity that we need to do the work of digging up, excavating, shadow work. And so that's a really important thing to note about where they are right now. And if we're following the transit of the sun for like the last 30 days, it has been on their first house. So this is the experience, once again, of like the sun shining on yourself, your identity. I would be curious about their experience over the last 30 days of sitting with themselves, and feeling, having their sense of self feel energized because of the like sort of vitality that the sun gives us, and also maybe even overly scrutinized. Are they putting any of that ninth house Saturn energy into scrutinizing themselves at this particular time, or at least in the last 30 days of Capricorn season, right? So that's the first thing that I notice. And then once again, we want to see where their ruling planet is in the sky. Where is Saturn in all of this? Oh, wait, I want to back up for a second. It's also interesting to note that their sun, like I said, the sun and Pluto are conjunct in their first house. Pluto can also deal a little bit with, it has that texture of the 8th house. So some of the things that we don't like to talk about, that are taboo, power dynamics, jealousies, and so I also wonder about their experience, because they've had Pluto transiting their first house for like the last 16 years. Since 2008, Pluto has been in Capricorn. Have there been Plutonian situations that came up around their self, their identity, who they fundamentally are? And so I'm wondering about the experience of maybe power struggles that end up with that person like centering themselves and, you know, valuing themselves over relationships with other people. I also wonder about the experience of, you know, sometimes power struggles in relationships can look like jealousy. So yeah, I'm curious about that experience as well. Yeah. So that's a thing to notice about the sun being in Capricorn, but also everything that's happening in their first house. They also have Mercury sitting in their first house and Mars. And so again, I wonder about, and those planets are kind of close. Are they in conjunction? Let me see. The Mercury's at 4 and the Mars is at 10. I'd call that a loose conjunction. Yeah, I wonder about the role of Mars fueled communications and ideas in their life right now. So Mars fueled Mars fueled communications, arguments, or conflicts in writing. That kind of thing. I wonder if that's been an issue since Mercury and Mars has been transiting their first house, which I think is the last couple weeks. That's a minor noticing. But yeah, I just wanted to wrap up everything in the first house that I'm noticing in terms of transits. And then, yeah, like I said, the next thing I would want to look at is where is Saturn? Because that's their ruling planet for their birth chart. Where is Saturn in all of this? Saturn is sitting in their third house of communications, and Saturn is, or that third house is in Pisces, and so generally speaking, I'm wondering if they have been doing, when did Saturn go into Pisces? I believe it was in March of 2023. I need to double check that. You double check that, actually. But yeah, they've had Saturn transiting their third house of communications, ideas, local travel, writing. What else is third house sorts of things? Siblings, or like your cousins if you grew up with your cousins. So yeah, I wonder about how they have been feeling responsible in that area of life, and I'm wondering about if they have had any sort of feeling that they need to work on these things, work on how they communicate their ideas, work on sharing ideas, writings, talking, vlogging, those kind of things with other people. I'm curious about, because it's in Pisces, I'm curious about how they have been managing their boundaries, their communication boundaries. And that also, again, harkens back to this Mercury, Mars sitting in the first house. It's actually 30. Wait, hold on. 30, 60. Yeah, it's sextile. So yeah, that Mercury Mars conjunction is sextile Mercury in the sky for them. So I'm wondering if maybe some of these arguments that may have happened I don't know their life. I wonder if they have fueled a need, a desire to work on boundaries as they communicate and connect with other people via their communication. Yeah. I'm really curious about that experience. I have to ask them directly. Follow-up email, make a note of it. Okay, got it. So yeah, that's another thing to notice. And then I will also say about their Saturn placement. So Saturn in transiting sky is at 4 degrees of Pisces, and their natal Saturn is at 22 degrees of Virgo. Pisces and Virgo are opposite signs, sister signs. They like to do things in the same way, mutability, you know, transition, transformation, adaptability, that kind of energy. But they are in different elements, Virgo being earth, Pisces being water. And why I mention that is that they are due for a Saturn opposition here. And I looked it up, I think it was in March of 2025, that Saturn in the sky will be directly opposite of their natal Saturn. So that's more of a long range heads up. Saturn opposition midlife transit. And it's kind of a time in life where if Saturn is a taskmaster that tells you to work on this particular area of life, so theirs is their philosophies, their belief systems, and how those philosophies and belief systems better themselves, especially in tangible ways. If that was their task, then Saturn opposition is a time of recognizing that that was the work that was supposed to be done, and it's a point of checking in. And so yeah, it's known as the midlife crisis transit because a lot of times when people hit that check-in, they're like, no, I'm off task and everything is falling apart and now I have to buy a sports car about it. And I doubt very seriously that that's probably this person's experience, because typically people with Saturn chart rulers are good workers. They are on task. They're usually quite responsible. It's one of the things that I love about Capricorn energy, and it's what I was talking about in my love letter to Capricorn last week. But yeah, the Saturn opposition is something to keep your eye on if you start to find in that time frame, March of 2025, or thereabouts. If you start to find yourself like reckoning with yourself, feeling as if you're running out of time, feeling as if you've wasted time, and that you haven't done your life's work, whatever you envision that to be, just keep in mind that that might be part of that transit, and to not, my therapist always says, stop shoulding on yourself. Don't think about what should have been, what you should have done, but rather what you can do now to get back on track, to get back in your trajectory. So yeah, that's more of a long range heads up. And then like I said, I like to look at this 8th house to see if there's anything transiting in the sky that is related to the 8th house perfection here. And as you can see, there's nothing in this blue ring for Leo. So you're clear on that. I feel like the last thing that I would say in terms of like just noticing overall larger patterns in this astro weather check-in, you know, it's just interesting to note that, like, yes, you're in an 8th house year, you are in the thick of it, and it might be a difficult time. However, you are prepared. I would say that you are prepared in the sense of being a Capricorn rising, and so that means like your chart, your life has a sort of Saturnian feel and vibe to it. And when I think about Saturnian vibes, I think about just, you know, understanding that sometimes you have to put your head down, do the work, have the experiences, but that you always come out successful in the end. And I'm curious about if you have had experiences that you can point to that tell that story so that you can pull from those experiences to strategize the rest of your 8th house year. I'll also say that an 8th house or an 8th house perfection year in Leo is definitely not the worst case scenario for an 8th house perfection year. Having a lot of light there shining in the darkness of the 8th house is absolutely helping you. And you are supported by that. And also, what would it be like to think of the sun as your ally? As the sun moves into Aquarius, what would it be like to think of the sun as giving you an extra boost in terms of the money that you earn and abundance, and looking and shining on your values and giving you an opportunity to check in with yourself? You know, it's illuminating some of those sort of darker, shadowy corners of this of things, and how could you actually use that to your advantage? And then when the sun moves into Pisces, how will that give you a boost in terms of being able to communicate and connect with people, and illuminate some of the ways in which you've been communicating that could be improved? Yeah, I think an 8th house perfection year ruled by the sun is very much the experience of shining the light in the darkest corners and giving you an opportunity to look at these things and evaluate them. So, you know, it's not the darkest, worst place that it could be. I'll say that. And I will finally close by saying that on their birthday that they have coming up, that they're going to move into a 9th house year. And again, that 9th house has Saturn in it, which is their chart ruler, and I think it's going to feel a lot like coming home. So yeah, any difficulty that you're experiencing in this 8th house year, just keep in mind that soon you'll get this opportunity to come home to a place that feels much more familiar, much more stable, and, you know, potentially a place of improvement, that Virgo energy. So yeah, that's basically the basics, the super basic skeleton of how I would approach an astro weather check-in. From the natal chart, I want to know the rising sign so that I can know the ruling planet. I want to find where the ruling planet is in the sky as compared to where it is in the natal chart, see if there's any friction there. And then I want to know what profection year that they are in so that I can know like what the area of focus is in terms of the house for this year for them. I want to know what planet rules the perfection year house, and then I want to know where that planet is both in the sky and in the natal chart. Know if anything that's happening in the sky is transiting any of the big 3 planets, the rising sign, the sun sign, or the moon sign. So yeah, that is how I approach an astro weather check-in. Thank you so much to my friend for allowing me to share their chart with you. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions about how you can do your own astro weather check-in. Do you know what perfection year you're in? Do you know what your chart ruler is? Do you know where your chart ruler is in the sky right now? Let me know. I can help you find out that information. And that's it. That's the video. That's what I got. Thank you so much for watching this far, and thank you for being subscribed to my channel. It absolutely makes a difference in my life. And thank you for making time for queer astrology. Don't forget to check in with yourself.